Hello everyone, make your way on inside those big double doors. We've got a couple of seats still open down here at the front if you want to make your way forward. Come on in everybody, we have a fantastic panel lined up here for these next 45 minutes. My name is Mike Pearson. I'm really proud to be the broadcast director at Farm Progress. I host our different broadcast properties, This Week in Agribusiness, which you can find on RFD TV and hundreds of affiliates across the country, and the Farm Progress America radio show. We're here today, however, to talk with our friends at Channel and their friends about planning profitably in 2026. Every Tuesday, Channel sends out an email. It's called the Profit Planning Email, designed to help farmers have strategies for the conditions we are going to encounter in agriculture in the week ahead. In this email, you get updates on weather, you get updates on agronomy, and you get market updates from Mr. Ted Seifried of Zaner Ag Hedge. Now, that comes every Tuesday into your inbox if you go to Channel and sign up for it, or sign up on the QR code at the end of today's presentation. Over the next 45 minutes, we're going to take that email and we're going to bring it to life. Here with us on stage, we have those exact categories represented. We are going to kick things off here in just a moment with Mr. Aaron Wilson. He is an assistant professor of ag weather, and he's a climate field specialist at Ohio State University. He's also the state climatologist for Ohio at the State Climate Office. He's going to give us the rundown of where we stand today, weather-wise, and what he's watching in the early parts of 2026. And of course, moisture makes grain. Once it mixes with that soil, agronomy is what takes center stage. Tyler Vreugdenhil of Kearney, Nebraska, technical agronomist here with Channel. He's going to share his insights on what to expect as 2026 gets underway. And then finally, we're going to take that weather insight, we're going to take the agronomic insight, we're going to put it together, and we're going to see how well farmers can do. Mr. Ted Seifried will have an update from a recent trip he took down to Brazil. It's in the news as it relates to commodity production. He's also going to give us some insights into what to expect on the market as we get deeper into 2026. What do you say? Should we kick this thing off? Yeah, there's some enthusiasm, folks. Mr. Aaron Wilson, would you please give us the update on the weather?
All right, thank you. I think I need to hire you just to walk around with me for the next couple of months as I'm giving meetings. So, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. This is actually my first time at Commodity Classic, and it's been a great experience so far. In that email each week, my counterpart out of Iowa, Maddie Wustenberg, she typically provides the update, but she has been on maternity leave. And she was gracious enough to give Channel my name, and so here I am with this great opportunity. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about weather and climate. And anybody see Eric Snodgrass's talk in the last session? Okay, great. I think I could just sit down now, right? Because he certainly laid out a lot of that information. But we're going to, typically I like to show a lot of weather maps, right? We all like a lot of weather maps. We're going to condense this down into 3 slides, really my 3 keys in terms of what we're looking at. And we're going to start thinking about this past winter, right? How many have enjoyed the winter so far? Raise your hand. Yeah. All right, cold, snowy where you are, or dry and warm where you are, right? So it depends on where you were in the country in terms of what we've experienced. And so, we think about this winter, there's been quite a bit of variety across the country. When you think about temperatures, basically from western Iowa, Missouri into Arkansas and points westward, it's been a very warm winter. We've had a strong ridge of high pressure. It's really blocked a lot of systems, a little bit of rainfall and moisture into California, but a lot of ski resorts have really suffered this winter because of a lack of snowfall. East of there, however, in my neck of the woods, I'm from Ohio, the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic up in the northeastern United States, has been quite the opposite, very chilly. I've waited my whole life for a 70s-esque type winter. We finally saw that a little bit in Ohio in terms of temperature and breaking blizzard records from 1978 along the coast and also in the Ohio Valley. But the first key here in terms of what our winter has provided us is what I'm showing on the first map here. This is the current U.S. drought monitor map that was released yesterday morning. Comes out every Thursday morning. Most of us should be familiar with the U.S. drought monitor, of course. I can show you what the precipitation has been like this past winter, but I think this map really encapsulates what we're looking at. Back home, I'm convincing folks, yes, you can have drought in winter. You can have drought in winter in Ohio. We don't experience that very often like other places do, but you can see from the map On the left-hand side, you can see abnormally dry in yellow and those different shades of drought from moderate drought up to extreme and even exceptional drought. So really hard hit from northwest Ohio back through central Illinois. Long-term dry conditions there extending down in the south-central U.S. and across Texas. And now, as of yesterday, 100% of Florida is covered by at least moderate drought conditions or worse, and extending up the eastern seaboard. So we've got, over 70, I think it's 75% of the country in some sort of drought conditions. It has been a dry year so far. On the right-hand side, you can see the class change in those drought categories. So really rapid onset droughts here over the last 4 to 12 weeks over, again, parts of Arkansas, over into the Carolinas, and just that persistent drought conditions in portions of the Midwest. Out west, creeping in from the Colorado Rockies out into Nebraska and southern South Dakota here. These are also areas that have been quite dry, even extending over from 2025. The exception to this would be a little bit in the southwest, up in the northwest areas, and then the Great Lakes up into the northern New England stretch. That's been a bit above average, wetter conditions over the last 12 weeks that have eased some of the dry conditions there. So drought in winter, what does that mean? Well, the biggest concern we think about this time is soil moisture recharge, right? And I'm not going to get into a lot of details and steal Tyler's thunder here, but soil moisture recharge is the big consideration that we're thinking about right now. When you've got deficits of more than 16 inches over the last year in parts of northwest Ohio, for instance, that's a lot to overcome. We don't want that all at once. But unfortunately, we do see signs for a very, very active pattern here as we head into the next few weeks. So that brings me to slide number 2 and key number 2. We do see a pretty radical pattern shift here as we head into the month of March. And in the last few days, as a matter of fact, we've really seen our model output crank up some ridiculously high amounts of rainfall from Louisiana, Arkansas, extending all the way up into the Great Lakes region. As a matter of fact, the latest models today look at anywhere from 7 to maybe 15 inches of rain over the next 2 weeks across that corridor. So we're going from conditions of very dry, rapid oscillations, that's something that we see quite often now, to very wet conditions across that sort of stretch. You do see most of the lower 48, even Hawaii and Alaska here with above sort of probabilities toward wetter than average. These maps from the Climate Prediction Center do not give magnitude, right? These are probabilities. I always laugh when I see this blowtorch pattern that we saw, in some of the media last winter, but 42 degrees is not a blowtorch feel, right? So we've got to be mindful about how we're communicating these things. So that dark red just means, yeah, we've got high probability that temperatures are also going to be warm. Now, transitions come with transitions are difficult, right? So even this increase in moisture over the next couple of weeks, we got a couple of snowstorms coming in upper Midwest down into the Ohio Valley here this weekend. I could see 3 to 6 inches back home by the time we get back there. So quite the shift from San Antonio, but transitions are hard. We do expect increased precipitation here, but some of that cold air toward the end of March can then refilter back down. We're not done with winter yet. Don't be fooled by this. I don't know where we are on the list, second full spring or whatever we want to call it. But at least over the next 8 to 14 days, we're looking at solid warmth to help warm up those soils, thaw things out, start getting us toward that planting season, which will be here before we know it. And then finally, my last key is the spring outlook. Highly variable conditions, I think, across the country, but really mimicking the similar pattern for March and some of those things setting up. What we do know is that we've had a La Nina system, a La Nina situation, cool sea surface temperatures in the tropical Pacific that have rapidly warmed and will likely continue based on our forecast. So we're seeing conditions lean toward El Nino as we head into the summer. But this is more on the seasonal temperature outlook here on the left, more of that waning La Nina pattern where we start out with the probability of cooler than average conditions across the northern tier, large transition zone of equal chance. What does equal chance mean? Well, it could be above, below, or near normal. I'm covering all of our bases here, right? But the signals aren't very strong until you get into those more, either north or south, where it does look like the southern tier of our area has a probability of warmer than average. To go along with that, we really have this southwest to Great Lakes break or pattern that's happening where the desert southwest is likely to be below average for March, April, May. Again, this is what does it look like at the end of this upcoming 3-month period. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have fluctuations and high variability. We can bank on that. The other thing you have to be really honest as a climatologist, this is the worst time to forecast late spring and summer in terms of what we expect. Our forecasting skill really is at the bottom of the annual cycle at the end of February, right? So anybody that tells you they're 100% sure what it's going to be like, they don't know. They really don't know because we're looking at the signals in the pattern here. But it does look like continued opportunities for plenty of rainfall across the Great Lakes region. Now, we can't forecast that means, 15 or 17 days of rain in the month of May, right? We don't want that. We don't want to be left out of the fields. But certainly it does lean itself toward more soil moisture recharge that hopefully we open up, get planting in, May and June, and then we can get that adequate moisture here back in the summer. So that's what I have for you today from the weather perspective. Again, those 3 keys being it's been a dry winter, soil moisture recharge is the big key right now. March is offering a really optimistic look at much wetter conditions, especially east. And then the spring conditions sort of maintaining that idea that the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley will remain wetter than average. But drought could develop and or worsen in parts of northern Texas, western Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska as well. So I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Quick question, Aaron, before you take a seat. You mentioned the rapid warming. We're seeing in the Pacific the conversion of a La Nina towards an El Nino.
Yes.
If that move continues and an El Nino situation develops here early mid-spring, what trends would that put in place for the summer in crop growing regions here in the U.S.?
Yeah, so, it's not just, El Nino is not the only player here. As a matter of fact, if you look at correlations of El Nino to midsummer weather atmospheric patterns in the United States, it's a very low correlation. What we really want to look forward to, and Eric highlighted in his last talk, is the North Pacific. And depending on if it's warmer or cooler than average, it sets up a pattern that can change across the U.S. Where it either leads to sort of dry conditions in the south central with a lot of rainfall to the north around high pressure, or it leads to the opposite effect where you can really kind of block out, get a strong high pressure centered over like St. Louis or the middle part of the country and really keep a lot of that rainfall at bay. So It's not just El Nino for the U.S. growing season. Of course, El Nino does then transition toward a little bit better conditions next year for our Southern Hemisphere friends.
All right, Aaron Wilson, thank you so much. Tyler, take us home on the agronomy here. What are you watching as 2026 gets underway?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all today. So I come from the state of Nebraska, so at Kearney. So if you've ever drove under that big arch on I-80, that's where I lay my head at night. Yep, I see a thumbs up there. So, Aaron did a nice job of teeing me up because number one topic that has been on my mind in winter agronomy meetings is really soil moisture. And I think this is a topic that's top of mind for really everybody in the room. Now, the photo that I show, as far as the map is concerned, that's looking at the total precipitation by climate region across most of the Midwest. So really easy way to interpret this. Green is good, means you're seeing above average precipitation trends. Brown means, man, you're one of the driest. So you'll see a number associated with each region. That's based on 134 years of data. So if you see where I grew up in southeast South Dakota, it says 134 if you're close enough to read it. That's the driest year that we have been through for the beginning of January to today. So some really, really serious stuff. Now, serious in the fact that in the state of Nebraska, we're 42 days away from the insurance date to plant corn, which is April 10th. Little concerning in here. Now I want that soil temperature to be a nice even 50 degrees and climbing, but on top of that, when we think about a corn seed having to imbibe 30% of its weight just to start the germination process, and we're sitting like this map is showing right here, that's a big concerning piece. Now, I've talked to several people here and they go, wow, you're from Nebraska. You got those fields that are in circles. You can just turn that little thing on and it'll make water for you. Yeah, well, we're a lot more easy to be around if we don't have to turn those on right away to get started. So the further we can push that back, the better. Now, the reality of this is, I think from an agronomy standpoint, we get one chance to do that planting pass. And I would argue it's your most important pass that you can do across that field. Because from seeding depth, that also triggers, okay, how fast can I get that seed to start? How even can I get that germination to be? And I don't know, how many of you guys have had a planting situation where it looks like that top photo, where we start to look like this? Yeah. Well, the reality is if you get about one growing stage behind, you're taking upwards of almost 20% of your yield away if you're one growing stage behind. If you go two or more, you can be upwards of 40+% that you're taking right away. So again, when I say we get one chance to do planting right, it's extremely critical to be very wary of what is my soil moisture status, how deep does that need to go? You know, is it 2 inches or do I need to go a little bit deeper to really get to solid moisture to start these seeds off the correct way? In another realm, I want to ask this room, and I'll just ask for a raise of hands. How many people in this room are 100% confident in their 2026 disease management plan for your corn? Oh, okay, that's about how I figured that would go. So this has been a mainstay for all of my meetings for this winter. My goodness, what do I use? Tyler, how do I apply it? How many times do I need to apply this? You know, I show a map here that looks at the southern rust. So this was the southern rust map for the entire U.S. at the end of harvest this year. So several people in this room, if not everybody, had to deal with this disease. If you didn't have this one, it was likely tar spot, right? So really want to focus in on, number one, what's our field history been? How does that disease get into our field? What's the field history of the disease pathogens? And then, you know, number two, what seed products have I purchased today? What are maybe some of the risks associated with that? Are some of them stronger on southern rust, stronger on tar spot, or hey, is there maybe one that has that as a weakness? So I need to be really cognizant of where those products go so they can be really successful in the field that I place them in. And then again, how many guys had to spray fungicide twice this year, just by raise of hands? I actually expected more. I would tell you in the state of Nebraska, that was pretty darn common this year with southern rust. A couple guys that sprayed once wishes they would have sprayed twice. I mean, it ended up that way. And then how should I apply the fungicide? We've got countless measures now, right? So is it by airplane? Is it by drone? Is it through a high boy system and a sprayer? So lots of things to think about, which makes it more and more important to have that relationship with your local channel seed professional, your technical agronomist, your sales agronomist, all of the above, to make sure we're making these decisions really carefully. This is a profit planning webinar, so again, making sure that we're associating the right dollar amounts to protect the products that need the most protection. You know, lastly, I want to leave you with a little bit of seed optimization. So had several conversations this winter as well about, hey, you know, thinking about taking my planting rate down. I'm planting this is a flexier product. I don't need to plant, you know, 36,000 unirrigated to be able to make this thing work. Can I dial that planting rate back? Yeah, the reality is your seed professionals all have that planting rate curve of, hey, what is it optimally taking to get the most yield potential out of the products that you're selecting? So that's data that we all have and can understand. The other reality is understanding your historical APHs. And let's be real about, hey, what has this field actually produced in the past? What am I aiming to shoot for? Do I have a fertility plan that's going to back that up as well? So leads me into my next point. You know, again, how does that hybrid respond to the management? Is it one that needs to be pushed? Or is it one that, hey, it's a tougher acre product? Maybe it's one that I don't need to push as heavily from a fertility aspect. And then lastly, you know, crop protection, the fungicide piece. How does that product respond? Is it one that is going to benefit from a fungicide application based on agronomic ratings? And again, those are all things that I would encourage you guys on a local basis, work with that seed professional locally. He's going to know your fields, he's going to know your agronomic history, and be able to tie all those things together. So the reality is, from a soil moisture standpoint, I got humbled in a meeting last week really well. Had a grower grab me at the end of it, and he goes, hey, I get it, like we're in a serious spot. But he goes, I'm gonna tell you, from Memorial Day last year to Labor Day, I got 23 inches of rain. So he goes, I'm not gonna sit and just plan for a failure based on where we are today. I'm still gonna be hopeful that we're gonna get the rain chances going into the future. So know your soil moisture status, understand where that is in that soil, make sure we make that planting pass count this year. It's extremely critical to get the right foot forward for that yield potential going into the spring and summer season. Number two, again, from a disease standpoint, it's up in the air. Are we gonna see southern rust again this year? You're likely gonna have tar spot. Tar spot's doing a really nice job of sticking around on inoculum and crop residue. The reality is we're gonna have to manage disease in some form or fashion. So, make sure you're having that conversation locally about what those risks are. Work with that seed professional to understand how to manage those products on your acres. And then lastly, again, seed optimization. So look at that planting rate. Are there ways where you can adjust that seed optimization and dial that planting rate back? Or in some cases, increase it where a product responds to that. So appreciate you having the time with you today, and I'll turn it back over to these guys.
All right, Tyler. Got a question for you on southern rust. Here, audience, how many of you dealt with southern rust last year for the first time in your farming careers? A number of you. I mean, I heard that from Iowa. Last year, we really saw that have an impact. I don't claim to be an agronomist, Tyler, so I need your insight. For those of us up north that got hit with southern rust last year, was that solely caused by weather phenomenon, or since it hit us so hard, do we need to be extra concerned coming into 26?
Great question, and a couple of things that I thought about. So what was really unique, and again, I'm speaking specifically for Nebraska here, but what was unique about southern rust I felt last year is, number one, how early it did hit us. It was probably about 2 to 3 weeks before we would essentially typically expect to see it. The second piece is the conditions were so conducive that it kept reproducing really, really well throughout an extended period of time. So, again, it's one that still needs to blow in to move into the area to actually, have an impact on the corn crop, but it's one that I don't think is necessarily going to go away.
It was that weird springtime hurricane weather phenomenon that pushed it up here early, and that was why we got stuck with it last year.
And we definitely saw it in 2024 as well, specifically in Nebraska. So to see 2 years back to back of that sort of southern rust exposure is pretty rare. So fingers crossed we just don't see it this year.
All right. Ted Seifried?
Yeah, so Tyler, how well does southern rust overwinter?
It doesn't overwinter specifically for Nebraska. It still has to blow in. Now, there is a survivability line where that does stick around in the southern U.S.,
Yeah.
but specifically for the northern producing states, it still has to blow in every year.
Okay, so because this winter, we've had some really, really cold weeks, and we've had some really, really warm weeks. But those cold weeks pretty much get rid of that?
Yeah, it's been a topic of, and I'm going off of what the pathologists that I've worked with at UNL has said. Again, they're still very much convinced that southern rust isn't surviving.
Okay.
My only thing is, I kind of wonder if that survivability line with the mildest of winters that we've experienced,
Right.
I kind of wonder if that's starting to creep north.
That's definitely what I'm wondering, yeah.
So.
And then follow-up question.
Yeah.
How much did the southern rust have an impact on yields? And certainly that can be different locally than it is nationally, but the national average yield, we had a record by a long shot, yet we had all the southern rust. How much of an impact did it end up having?
Well, I took a phone call from Iowa, I won't say where, but just in the center of the state. So again, in Nebraska, we dealt with it the year before. We knew it's nothing to mess with. I heard of a case in Iowa, in the central part of Iowa, where somebody didn't treat and they did treat, and you're talking anywhere from a 40 to 70 bushel difference of treated to not treated. So.
And the USDA did lower Iowa, but not significantly enough to have a major impact on the national average yield. If it would have come in 3 weeks earlier, 2 weeks earlier, would it have had a much, much more profound difference?
I mean, I'm speculating, but I don't see how it couldn't have, for sure.
Right.
These warm springs are causing trouble. They certainly are. Ted Seifried, thanks for kicking things off there. Of course, now you take a look at the markets, which definitely explains that southern rust question.
Yeah.
But before we get into what you're watching here in 2026, you just got back from a really interesting trip down to Brazil.
Did.
We've talked a lot about Brazil here in agriculture in America over the past 5 or 6 years as their soybean production has ramped up.
Yes.
Fill us in. What did you see? You're the most recent person to have traveled down there. Give us the download.
Well, I didn't see any southern rust in Brazil, so there's that. But also, we weren't really looking at corn in Brazil, or the corn that we were seeing was just very early on, just had been planted within the last few weeks. We were there for the height of the Mato Grosso soybean harvest, and wow, it's, I called it sailing the seas of soybeans. It's soybeans as far as the eye can see, and it kind of different stages. I mean, the vast majority is ready to be harvested or getting harvested, as you can see from the pictures. But also saw some fields that were 3 weeks away. So they do kind of stagger things just a little bit. But the very impressive thing is just the amount of technology and resources that they have.
Ted, I want to ask you a question. 10 years ago, when we were talking about Brazil and their harvest would ramp up, the stories were Brazilian harvest is off to a record start, but truckers are striking.
Right.
The roads are terrible. They can't get to the ports. It's a 17-hour drive. How much has that changed here by 2026?
Yeah, roads are still terrible. Our bus almost fell into a river. But they're working on it. The main thing that they're trying to work on for Mato Grosso is to dredge the rivers so that they have a clear path to get north to that northern arc area, the new deep water ports that have been put in the last 5 to 10 years. Really financed by China, by the way. And actually, it's funny because that's a news topic of conversation right now. The indigenous in Brazil have taken over a Cargill plant in order to protest the dredging of these rivers. They're worried about the animals that might be affected, or the water animals that would be affected. So there is some contention over that in Brazil right now. But if they are able to dredge those rivers and open up, basically, not the Mississippi because it's not that big, but if they're able to open up the waterways, that'll really, really improve the logistics that they have down in Brazil. So that is something they're really pushing hard for. The ag industry is really pushing hard for in Brazil right now.
Okay. All right. So you saw harvest going on. How are yields? What are you watching from a production standpoint in Brazil? How well do these beans perform down there?
Yeah, these beans that you see in the picture right there, obviously they're getting harvested at that moment, but that field that farmer was saying was doing 90 bushel an acre. They have to do the conversions in their head. They don't do acres, they don't do bushels, but they do bags and hectares, or whatever hectares are. But 90 bushel an acre. I mean, you can see there's just pods straight up and down everywhere. It was a really good crop in Brazil this year. The Brazilian farmers were convinced when we were there that they were not a 178 million metric ton crop like the USDA is saying. They were a 185, 186 million metric ton crop.
Now again, we got to convert that because that number doesn't mean a whole lot to us up on this side of the equator. 178 million metric tons. Ted, I did the math a while back. I believe that's 6.6 billion bushels of soybeans. Does that sound accurate? Yeah,
and consider that the latest Ag Outlook Forum numbers from the USDA has got us at a 4.327 or something like that.
I mean, that's key, folks. That is a key insight to what is happening in the world here. 10 years ago, Ted, how many bushels of soybeans did Brazil produce?
Oh, they've almost doubled their production in 10 years.
In 10 years, production has doubled.
Yeah,
how do the farmers feel? I mean, are they ebullient? Are they looking to roll out, continue increasing acres to the extent that they are able, or are they feeling a profit squeeze as well?
Well, the Brazilians love soybeans, right? And they are feeling a profit squeeze, but their answer to that is more soybeans, right? So they love soybeans. I think the biggest thing for me was corn. They don't really prioritize corn like we do here in this country. We love corn, we love to plant corn, we love to harvest corn, and part of the reason for that is because we have great yields. We just feel good about what we do with corn. The Brazilians, however, corn is sort of a secondary issue. I mean, it is actually their second crop. It competes with cotton for acreage, and they plant a shorter day variety because it has to be a second crop, and they have to deal with their dry season. So in Brazil, they pretty much know to the day when it's supposed to start raining and to the day when it stops raining. I mean, that would be a very handy thing for us to have too, right? But they have a shorter window for corn. So their yield potential isn't as good as ours because they can't plant 115-day corn, right? So their yields won't keep up with ours. They don't get the feeling of going out and harvesting a 230 bushel an acre crop. They focus on soybeans. And at the same time, they've really started to use a lot more corn in country. Domestic demand for corn, as you can see, from 2016 to 2026 is grown by almost 800 million bushel. And that's great. And while their production for corn is outpacing that growth in demand, the trajectory or the amount of growth that we're seeing, at some point, you got to feel really good about that domestic demand growth that they're having. It's really mostly been driven by ethanol. Traditionally, Brazil makes ethanol from sugarcane. That's what it's always been. But recently, they're taking our cues. You know, you go to an ethanol plant in Brazil, and it's a guy from Iowa and a guy from Wisconsin that are really running the place. They'll have a Brazilian general manager because, you know, it's Brazil and they have to do that. But the guys that are really making all the decisions and showing them how to do it, they're from here, right? So that domestic demand growth and the reluctance to really fully embrace corn like we do, I think gives us an opportunity to really be or retain that #1 corn exporter of the world title indefinitely. Yeah. I don't think Brazil's going to take us over on that one.
Okay.
They took over on soybeans a while ago, even right before the first trade war. They really started doing that. They will continue to run with that ball. But I think the bright spot for us is that our corn opportunities are going to be there. And I'm really optimistic about our corn export program for years to come.
Okay. Ted, one of the things I've heard just on the Brazilian consumption of corn, we've known for 25 years, Brazilian beef, it's grass finished. That's what they do. They run them in the Cerrado. They pull them off after 3 years and they process them, ship them up here as grass-fed beef. That's not necessarily the case anymore. I understand they're running more into feedlots with corn finished rations. It's up 5-6% in the past couple of years.
So they are using more corn for feed, but the big one is DDGs. So when you have growth in the ethanol market, then you have this byproduct, you have DDGs. And it's really all kind of closed cycle, right? Farmer takes his corn to the ethanol plant, that gets converted to ethanol, and then he takes the DDGs back to his herd of cattle, and that gets fed to their cattle. So they are using a lot more DDGs to feed their cattle. What that is doing, while it's increasing corn demand through ethanol, corn feed in Brazil is increasing, but not like that, right? But it's keeping DDGs off the export market too. The ethanol plant that we were visiting in Mato Grosso, only 5% of their ethanol was going to export, and only 5% of their DDGs were going to export. Okay. So that's a big deal. That's great. That's using really everything in-house. Ethanol is a really big deal in Brazil. They're at E30. They're trying to go to E85, which might happen by the end of April. So, E30 moving to E35, right? So, look, it's great for them to use all of that there. Because again, that just gives us an opportunity to continue to be that global leader in corn exports.
Speaking of which, another form of corn exports, DDGs and ethanol exports from the U.S., Ted, we've been on a record tear, haven't we?
We've been on a record tear. For raw corn exports, record tear. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. DDG and ethanol has been really, really, really good too. Yeah, it's great. I mean, let's just keep going with that.
It is.
I hate to say, and this chart's going to show it, I hate to say, yeah, we lost the war on soybeans. I mean, we can't give up on soybeans. We need a rotation, so we need to find domestic uses for soybeans. That's got to be the push here in this country, right?
Speaking of which, Ted, how does the crush look domestically? I mean, are we profitable crushing these beans today here in the United States of America?
Crush is running at record pace, by far. I mean, crush is great. It's being driven by sustainable aviation fuel, right? Or the potential for sustainable aviation. You have soybean oil really, really very strong right now, which is interesting because soybean oil stocks have really built here over the last few months, and you do wonder if at some point that will start to cut into or slow that crush down. But the crush margins are good. Soybean oil prices are still good. And when you have decent meal prices, but really good soybean oil prices and good crush margins, we're going to keep, until that changes, we're going to keep rolling on this crush at a record level. Now, one thing I will say about the crush is that in this last Ag Outlook forum that we got last week, USDA doesn't have crush increasing next year. And these are early estimates from the USDA, but they don't have crush increasing next year as much as it has the last couple of years. Last year has been between 5 and 7% increase year over year. For this year, currently, they only have it penciled in for a 3% increase. So I think they are starting to see like, oh, okay, soybean oil stocks are building, palm oil stocks are big. Like, okay, maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves for the moment. But over time, that's really what we need to do. We need to continue to develop our domestic demand in the crush. We will still have other countries not named China that we'll have an export business with. But look at this chart. I mean, we completely missed our traditional export season for soybeans. That is really bad. That's pitiful. Now, the main reason for that is China, obviously. But even with that 12 million metric tons, that's where you see that little spike there. But now it's really fallen off again. And now we're getting into the doldrums. Now, it is a possibility that we've shifted our windows and that we might have a good finish. That is, if China, considering this additional 8 million metric tons, comes in and actually follows through on that, I have my doubts on that. But if they were to, that could make this look a little bit better. But this chart right here has got to be the story, one of the two biggest stories of this current crop. And this one is the one that's really bad news, right?
Ted, let's talk about those potential soybean exports.
Yeah.
We've seen China continue showing up on export sales every Thursday. They've been some of our largest export sales partners. How much of these purchases have been shipped? And how many million metric tons are still on U.S. shores as a cancellation risk?
Yeah, so
if China wants to play that card.
This is shipments. This isn't sales, right? But in order to ship, you have to have sales. Yeah. And if you look at the export sales the last 2 weeks, they've been terrible. The last 2 weeks, the sales have really fallen off. And so once China hit that 12 million metric tons, there's only been a smattering of sales since then. Part of that, they were on their Lunar New Year holiday, where they completely shut down for that. So we kind of took that with a grain of salt, saying, okay, well, when they come back from this week and a half long party, maybe they'll come back and buy some more soybeans. But we're kind of waiting. So far, crickets. Okay. Right? So we really need to see these sales pick back up in order to give us that opportunity to have that counter-seasonal export, have some better exports. Years where that happens is usually when South America has a big problem. And you might be having a bit of a problem in Argentina. You have some quality issues in like northern Mato Grosso. They've had too much rain, so quality issues. But I don't know, right? We need to see those weekly export sales really pick up in order to have that optimism or have that opportunity to have this counter-seasonal.
On a 7 billion bushel crop, they can have some weather hiccups and still have more than enough to meet world needs.
Yeah.
Ted, but we are here. We are planning for profit in 2026. That's what we're doing. How can we take all of this knowledge we have about the soybean industry and the growing global competitors that we have and be profitable? What's your insights here for farmers looking ahead to 2026? Do you like planting more bean acres, fewer corn acres?
I mean, the market right now is asking for more bean acres, but I don't know if I agree with that. Fundamentally speaking, I have big concerns about what our business with China is going to be. I'm skeptical that China does follow through on the 25 million metric tons that they've been talking about for the next 3 years. China talking about considering that 8 million metric tons. I have this sort of nagging thought in my head that, maybe that was announced when it was announced to try to get us to plant more beans in order to pad or cushion the global supply going into the next Brazilian growing season so that they don't have to worry about it and they don't have to worry about high prices. I don't really feel confident that they're going to follow through on that 8 million metric tons.
What's the price differential between U.S. soy, say in the PNW, and Brazilian soy at a northern port to go to China? Are we comparably priced? Are they substantially cheaper at this point in time?
A lot of that depends on who has tariffs on what and so on and so forth. But really, I mean,
for China,
it's about a $1.30 difference right now.
Okay, to buy from Brazil.
Yes, right. Brazil's so much cheaper, especially after this rally that we've had since basically, the beginning of February. So we've priced ourselves out of the global soybean export market because China might be coming to buy some from us. If they don't, the other world business that we would have gotten, that goes away. So we might end up with a worse situation if China doesn't buy that 8 million metric tons. And that's a big problem, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's
Are you selling Novi beans on this rally?
Look, I think this is the second opportunity that we've now had in the last 4 or 5 months to get some pricing done for next year. And while I'm not saying we should aggressively price corn right now, because I think corn has a more seasonal trend this year than what we've seen the last couple of years. You don't have funds super long corn in January and February like you have the last couple of years. Funds have been short corn. We have weather risks for corn in that second season safrinha corn crop in Brazil. In our planting season, which these guys talked about, with the drought monitors that we have, if that rain doesn't come on, we have big concerns about our growing season. So there's a lot of weather premium that isn't currently in the weather market or in the corn market that could get the funds excited, that could get us to higher prices. I want to be optimistic about that, and I want to be sort of measured on my new crop sales for corn. But for soybeans, you have to take this rally that beans have had, that corn has not had, and sort of capitalize on that, even if we don't love the prices, right? That's just where we're at.
Well, we've still got a couple of minutes left, Ted. Wanted to get your thoughts. We haven't talked much about the wheat market. It's on fire here to the end of the week. Chicago's up 20 cents, I think, on the week.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah, and that's really helping the corn market out today, too. But wheat, look, funds have been short wheat for years now, right? And you give them global geopolitical issues that scare them, possibilities of war, they go risk off, meaning we have these big short speculative positions. We don't know what's going on. We need to move away from that. So they've been covering their short position. That's given us a really nice rally in wheat. But the problem is, I don't know if there's a real reason for them to go long, unless it's from a chart. But from a fundamental perspective, 900 million bushel carryover here domestically. That's more than enough wheat. There's no need to price ration wheat domestically. And the only reason we would start seeing that number come down would be if we were to get a whole lot more exports on wheat. But the problem there, Mike, is this is one of the rare years where any of the major exporters of wheat haven't had a growing issue. USDA's had to add 30 million metric tons to the global production number because everybody's had a great year with wheat. And that probably has a lasting effect for a couple of years to come. So I think for our wheat growers, we need to look at this rally as an opportunity to be pricing. Yeah.
How far out are you pricing on this rally, given that this could be a global glut situation for some time?
Well, so I don't think you need to be aggressive going in multiple crop years, because I think the good news for wheat is that the worst news is behind us, right? I mean, like I said, this is a very atypical year where nobody has a production issue. Again, I think you go out maybe a crop year, right? I mean, wheat's got different marketing years. So really right now I'm focused on this current marketing year, but I think you can start dabbling with the next two.
All right. Tyler, I'm curious, as you talk to your producers across Nebraska, are you hearing much on acreage shifting, or are guys planning to stay with their rotations as you look out to 26?
Yeah, definitely starting to hear a lot more interest in going to a soybean acre shift just because profitability overall. So that's definitely being real. I mean, there's definite conversations of more of a soybean acre shift versus corn.
Okay, so you're seeing it on the ground. That USDA report, 4 million more soy, that at least in your corner of Nebraska,
Looks
might
accurate.
hold out.
Yeah.
All right. Ted, anything we need to be doing at this point in time to manage that risk? We've got our crop insurance price almost in, right after today.
Yeah, today.
Today's the last day. How do you want to use that benchmark to plan profitably to get us through at least this early part?
First of all, I want to follow up on the question you just asked, Tyler. It makes sense to see about a 4 million acre shift back just from a rotation standpoint. Again, we talked about it just a minute ago. I think for corn, normally this time of year, I want to tell guys to be between 15 and 30% sold for new crop. I'm cutting that back to like 5 to 15, 5 to 20% for new crop corn. Again, I think we have a more seasonal year. I think you'll have other opportunities through this growing season to price corn better. But for soybeans, it's the other way. I think you want to be more aggressive than you usually would. Normally, I'd say 10 to 30% for soybeans at this time of year. I think 15 to 35, maybe.
All right.
Use the rally that we've had.
Get the protection on when you can, not when you have to.
Right.
We do have some questions from the floor. Folks, if you've got a question, just get your hand in the air. We've got time for one or two. We'd love to bring a mic over to you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. We talk about China always, it's soybeans and all that. And I was to a thing a while ago, and they said, forget about China. We need to be chasing other developing countries that are hungry for our soybeans. Also, I think they said at that time there are 16 soybean plants, processing plants under construction in the world somewhere. And then if you look at China, I've heard that China is pouring huge amounts of money into Brazil and that, into their infrastructure and that. China's not our friend if you haven't figured that out.
Yeah.
And we're at the bottom of the list of where they want to come to get their soybeans. So how do we deal with all that?
Yeah, that's a whole presentation right there, a lot to unpack. What I will say this, when you talk about selling soybeans to other developing countries, those two things don't go together because they don't have the crush facilities in place. What we need to do is sell the products. We need to sell soybean meal specifically to other developing countries as they're developing their livestock programs. We need to find markets for soybean meal because we're not going to convince Ethiopia into putting up another 10 crushing facilities. That's not going to happen. We need to sell our soybean meal. We need to do the value add in-house here, more crush capacity here in the United States, more domestic demand for raw soybeans by finding more export demand for our products. And then as far as China is concerned, they're financing the revolution, the agricultural revolution in Brazil. All of the money that's going for the infrastructure is coming from China. But not only that, all of the money that farmers are using to operating loans and plant their crops is being financed by Chinese companies as well. China's obviously very, very interested in continuing to develop Brazil's agriculture because, well, they're buddies, they're friends, right? So that is what it is. So once again, longer term, the best thing that we can do for our soy industry, in my opinion, is to develop that in-house demand or in-country demand, build more crush facilities. But in order to make that sustainable for the crushers, we got to find, we need to find an export market, bigger export market for our soybean meal. We need to take Argentina on, not Brazil.
Great point. Might have time for one final question if we got a quick one. Right up here in front. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for running, buddy. Good job.
Love the hustle.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if the gluten-free, low-carb stuff is affecting, like, not just the American market, but all the other country markets.
That's a great question. You could add in GLP-1 weight loss medication and all that stuff too, yeah.
You know, and I'm going to say, I saw this in the presentation, I did a presentation with him to start the Commodity Classic. I saw he had something in his, that population's risen by like 12% while wheat demand's only up like 2%, right? So yes, that is a thing. Like, we are moving away from starch-based diets. We're moving towards more protein-based diets, whether it be GLP or what's that, Ozempic or?
Yeah.
Whether it be, you know, that or just our taste as a culture is more protein heavy. I think a lot of that's based on the fact that we've had a really strong stock market and everybody's feeling good about their 401ks. People are spending money on high-priced beef. That could change, and we could go back to more of a wheat-based or starch-based diet.
If
but
things
for right
get
now,
tough, we're eating a lot of bread again.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but for right now, we are very focused on our proteins. We're happy to spend the money to do it. So yes, wheat demand for food has been the victim of that.
Great question. Great questions from everybody in the crowd. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause for sharing their time and expertise with us today. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Well done.
Now, folks, we just spent 45 minutes doing an in-person version of the profit planning email. This comes out every Tuesday from our friends at Channel. All you need to do right now in this room, get your phone out, point your camera at that QR code. You'll get this kind of expertise coming to you weekly into your inbox with Channel. On behalf of Channel and their partners with us at Farm Progress, we want to say thank you all so much for coming out today. Have a fantastic time with the remainder of Commodity Classic 2026. Get home safe, everybody. Thanks for coming out.